Today we go over the character of Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars franchise. This is Mike Zero here. If you guys are new to the channel, do make sure to subscribe to see future Star Wars content. Now, as you all know, ever since The Last Jedi released back in December of 2017, a lot of people disagreed with some of Rian Johnson's ideas that were implemented in the movie, a lot of which had to do with the character of Luke Skywalker. Now, when it comes to me specifically, I really do wish that we actually had a whole lot more dialogue from Luke Skywalker explaining about his past and his regrets, etc. And thankfully, this is what The Last Jedi comic adaptation does for the movie, to fill in new pieces of dialogue that could have been in the actual motion picture. And if you guys ask me, and I'm going to be going over this very interesting piece of dialogue by Luke Skywalker that actually goes over his biggest regret in his entire life, aside from failing Ben Solo, his own nephew. And this all has to do with him becoming a legend. Now, what's so great about this, is that he mentions his father, he mentions Darth Sidious in a different way, in a very, I guess you could say, more clever way. The way it's written, it just sounds more true to the character of Luke Skywalker and how the past could have been handled by Luke if he actually didn't want himself to become a legend and his act to become a legend post Return of the Jedi. So when he's talking to Rey in the Prime Jedi Temple, the first Jedi Temple I should say, when they're both kneeling on that little mosaic and they're talking to each other in the comic, Luke Skywalker briefly goes over his biggest regret and actually admits it to Rey and talks about him becoming a legend and the whole entire story of the death of Darth Vader, his own father, and Darth Sidious. He says, "Oh, how I wish I had never told anyone that story. I should have just let what happened die with my father, with Sidious. But I learned how quickly a good tale spreads like fire throughout the galaxy and becomes legend." And that's what's great about The Last Jedi comic, is that it introduces all these new pieces of dialogue, not just by Luke Skywalker, but also by the characters of Yoda, Rey, etc., even Leia. And I feel like a lot of the dialogue that we do see in the comics feels more true to the characters in the actual motion picture, and it could have been actually the dialogue that could have been used by writer and director Rian Johnson to implement it in that movie. So, what's interesting to me is Luke does indeed have this regret of both the death of Darth Sidious and Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker essentially saving the day, and how he became a legend. He realizes how fast a legend spreads like wildfire across the entire galaxy. Now, the one thing that I felt was out of place in the first Jedi Temple scene when he's talking to Rey is Luke is indeed talking about Darth Vader, but Rian Johnson didn't essentially tap into some dialogue where he would actually talk about Darth Vader actually being his father to Rey. And it actually led a lot of people wondering to themselves in the very beginning, does Rey actually know that Darth Vader was the father of Luke Skywalker? But then, people listened more carefully and she knows, because she talked about how Luke Skywalker, totally did not think he could save him, but then he ended up turning him from the dark side back to the light. So clearly, there's some dialogue that could have been filled in the Last Jedi movie, and it's also in there in the novelization, in the comics. It really just makes you understand all the conversations between these two characters and other characters a whole lot more. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of fans would have loved to see, was Luke talking more about his father. In fact, in the very beginning of the Last Jedi comic adaptation, just before Rey arrives, Luke is speaking to himself, talking about Yoda, Obi-Wan, and even Anakin, alright? So his masters, essentially, all of the figures that are giving him advice and guidance, and how he separated himself from this whole entire concept of the Jedi Order because he saw the flaws within it. And that's what I really love about these comics, is that it really goes in depth, not just by what you're looking at, but the dialogue that you do read for these characters such as Luke, Rey, Yoda, Kylo Ren, etc. And I think these pieces of dialogue should have absolutely been embedded in multiple scenes for Luke Skywalker. I cannot wait to, by the way, pick up the last remaining issues for The Last Jedi comic book adaptation. We're about halfway through now, I believe. The next one is going to go over the entire throne room sequence and more of the Battle of Crate, etc. So we're going to learn more and more about new pieces of dialogue and certain events that weren't explained in The Last Jedi itself. And a lot of people, that's the one complaint, is that a lot of people see that the novels and the comics and stuff like that for this movie are adapting all the things that I believe, or that all of you guys, a lot of you guys out there believe as well, should have been put in this movie alone. But anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.